Morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves briefly. You already have their bios with you. Just a quick introduction. My name is Megha Bari. I'm a journalist. I'm a contributing writer for Forbes magazine in the US. This panel is about entrepreneurship in India in an era of fancy buzzwords like AI, big data, etc. And I'm going to start with Minya here. Please introduce yourself and talk about what is entrepreneurship in India look like. It's on.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Minya. I'm an author. I think you have my books in your bags. It's called Indian Instincts. I'm also a public speaker and an advisor to companies on issues related to sustainability. So on entrepreneurship, I think that the whole, let's talk about governance, the whole institution of governance. It's something that we've created, be it, at the times of tribes or kingdoms or democracy, to put some kind of an order into our lives so that, we can live and let live. And similarly, corporations as well. It's an institution that we ourselves had created so that we can all earn a livelihood and live a life of our choice. But now what's happened is it's the other way around, where we shape our lives according to the needs of corporations and the way things are going at the workplace. We need to acquire new skills and add on experiences, new competencies to match the way the economy and companies are evolving. Now, despite that, in India, we have 18 million people who are jobless. And there was this recent World Bank report which, put it out there that 30% of Indians, the age group of, I think, 15 to 29, they were NEETs, so not in education or training, which is really sad, right? So jobs in India, earning a livelihood is something that's really crucial. We saw that in the recent, the budget that came out as well. There's a lot of emphasis on that. Now, one of the best ways to tackle joblessness is, of course, to encourage the creation of job providers and job creators, which is entrepreneurs. Now, the question that we're talking about today, that how do we do that? How do we encourage entrepreneurship and encourage people to therefore earn a livelihood for themselves in an era of artificial intelligence, blockchain? Because these are typically technologies which are job snatchers, right? Because these are replacing processes where to improve or to eliminate the human error. So how do we do that? How do we actually turn that into an opportunity? So it's such a crucial and relevant question that we're dealing with today. We need to keep in mind as we go into the panel, I think, that firstly, there is a lot of opportunity, especially in areas like healthcare and education and agriculture, and these are three sectors which are so important to India's progress and growth today. So we need to keep that in mind, that we have to be optimistic about these technologies. And at the same time, I think when you're looking at entrepreneurship in this context, there are certain challenges, because these are technologies which need new skills, like I mentioned. It needs data, it needs transparency, it needs regulation, and probably, Megha, we can talk about this in the panel, that how do we overcome these challenges.
Vinay, I'm going to ask you to step in now. At Microsoft, you are looking at the next billion people who are going to come online, a vast majority of whom will be in India. What are you seeing in your research? What are what are you guys doing for that community in the context that we're talking about?
Sure. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Vinay Kumar. I'm part of Microsoft's artificial intelligence and search business development team. So we work with a lot of startups, a lot of mature companies, both traditional as well as digitally native companies, for AI infusion and for AI scenarios that they are looking at incorporating or creating for their consumers. So before I answer the question, just want to sort of take a step back and paint the broader picture that we see how computing is changing dramatically and how it'll change over the next decades. So one big change that we see is that the computing model is moving towards cloud and the edge. And when I say cloud, that means the computing power is shifting towards intelligent cloud. And by edge, I mean that people will not be interacting with one device. They will have multiple devices that they'll be interacting with. So that's a broader sort of shift we see, paradigm shift that's happening in the computing space. And AI would be the layer that binds all these experiences and augments human capability, with predictive computing power, insights, and all the other things that human cannot do at the moment. So in the context of India, when we see how the next 100 million, 200 million, 500 million people would come into the internet economy, one of the problems is that people are, beyond the first 100 or 200 million people, the literacy level drops dramatically. So the mode of interaction with those people, with whatever device they are using, may not be text, it may be voice. So one of the ways we are thinking about bringing these people into the computing fold is to invest heavily in voice recognition. So voice recognition means that we should be able to understand not just the phrasal context of what people are saying, but have a conversation with them in the context of what they are trying to do. And that too in the regional languages. So we've started with English, which is Indian accent English, then Hindi and some other regional languages. So voice, we believe, will become the next sort of first-class citizen for how humans will interact with their devices. And in India, this is going to be very pronounced because of all the factors that I mentioned earlier. But even in other countries, you see voice is becoming, I don't know if you had a chance to go to CES this year, earlier in Jan. So voice is everywhere. So voice is how people are interacting with their refrigerators, with their cars and other things. So that's one big area. And then the second big area is how we help big companies reach out to these consumers. So these consumers, so in that context, we are helping companies build bots, which are sort of automated human interaction systems. So currently those systems are text-based, but they are also moving towards voice. So you should be, let's say if you're sitting in a tier 3, tier 4 city, you should be able to talk to the bot and tell that bot what you're looking for, what device, what product you want to buy, what services you want to avail. And the bot should be able to go in the background and fetch those services for you. So that's a big shift that we see happening over the next several years.
On that, Neeraj, maybe you could step in. A big part of the service economy in India is call centers and human beings in those call centers. I don't know how quickly some of the technology that Vinay is talking about can replace those jobs, but I'm assuming it's just a matter of time. What does that mean for the economy? What does that mean for employment? What does that mean for, we are a country where 1 million people are coming into the job force or eligible to be in the job force every month. So we need to create that many jobs. And to Minya's earlier point, some of these technologies are considered to be job killers, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I've had the fortune of being involved in creation of that industry, and also now as an investor, I look at technologies which could potentially have bots take the place of what has been done by human beings for a while. My own sense is that we will see a structural change in employment. A lot of industries that generated employment will not. I actually disagree with the point made in the morning that we need to promote manufacturing in a big way. Yes, I think manufacturing is important, but it's not going to generate jobs. So I think the point that Minya made earlier about areas like education, healthcare, entertainment, something people miss out. It's a big area with the accessibility of content across the world, tourism, places like that. Jobs will be created in unusual industries, and there will be a structural change. One can fight that, one can try to regulate that, but I think besides the fact that you need to preserve jobs, there's also a question of making human beings productive. And if you're doing things unproductively, we've seen that in socialist countries historically, you can't keep jobs by making people work unproductively. You don't necessarily raise the standard of living. So I think it's very important for us to change the narrative now from looking at what jobs will be lost to where jobs will be created. And I think there's very little conversation around that. So elaborating on that just a little bit is that my own sense is that there are two big sources of job creation. One is the nature of work. One has to look at that. And a friend of mine used a very nice phrase which says that hand and heart will matter more than the head when it comes to jobs in the future, because historically we've been trained to educate people and value jobs where logic and left brain intelligence mattered. But I think all that is getting more and more automated, and therefore things that can be, complex things that can be done by hand, not like making coffee, because I've had the experience of having a coffee made by a robot as well. It was very good coffee, by the way. So I think it's more a question of things that need to be done by hand, or more importantly, things need to be done by heart. I would argue that entertainment industry I'm very close to. We're massively short of creative writers. It is unusual to think about it in that manner, but we will see creative writers writing scripts making more money than engineers. So just to think about it,
I live for that day.
There is a structural change happening today. We have to see how that's happening, and I think it's very important to change the narrative to saying where will jobs get created.
A couple of points I want to pick on what you said, and maybe Vipul, you can step in for that. One is job creation, and Vipul, that's what you do, because your firm, you're investing in companies, in startups, in the developing economy, which I think is the crucial context over here. Using some of these technologies. So one is job creation. If you could talk about that, and what are you seeing through your lens in terms of what are the startups doing, etc. And the second is how do we prepare, and maybe all of you can jump in at some point on that. How do we prepare the workforce, to your point, Neeraj, to get to to be ready for the new economy?
So just a quick point of view. I work for Stanford SEED program. It's an initiative run by Stanford University. We work across Africa and India, specifically only with SME sector. We have till date 565 companies who have gone through the program. So there is a lot of learning for us also. So that's my lens. As Megha said, it's all lenses. But before I start, I would like to share that I kind of agree with Neeraj. The narrative has to change. Artificial intelligence, our perceptions of a common man are solely driven and primarily driven by science fiction movies, unfortunately. So from that perspective, what Stanford has done, we have started an initiative called AI 100. If you Google, you'll get to it. The intent is to really look at artificial intelligence and its impact on our society from multiple perspectives, not just from engineering technology perspective, but from a holistic perspective where we are bringing in experts from legal sector, from social, and it's an initiative which will go on over several years to understand. From real life experiences, what we have seen, I have a beautiful cohort company right now in India who is actually working with fleets, truck fleets, to implement AI and telematics. The objective is to improve driver safety, to improve fuel efficiency, because these people don't get the benefits what we get. So how can you create the environment, and how can you enable them to analyze their driving behaviors, which then can improve their safety? There's another education company which is actually working on AI and BI to improve learnings. So, when I look at technology, it's like nuclear. So nuclear is a very nice word to we can all understand. Nuclear energy can be used and abused. So AI can be used and abused. It's an energy, a power, a technology, innovation which is coming into our society. We should accept it. And to answer Megha's to the second question, I love entrepreneurs. When we work with these 45, 60 companies of entrepreneurs, the fundamental remains the same. The great entrepreneurs identify large unmet societal needs. They put in great teams. They have a lot of passion behind it to solve problems. If you're working on a very small sliver of solving a problem, it ain't going to make an impact. But I've seen these entrepreneurs harness the power of entrepreneurship, of leadership, of innovation, of technology to really go out and address those large needs which exist in our society.
Does anyone want to step in on how we can prepare the workforce? How do we head to this direction?
So I agree with Neeraj and Vipul that, we believe that it'll have a massive impact on society. The artificial intelligence. We have not talked about quantum computing and, mixed reality in those areas as well. But the shift that is happening will have a massive impact on the society in years to come. And it'll be a very, very positive impact on healthcare. We have, we've been working with companies to improve the, quality of how we detect vaccines, etc., for chronic illnesses, where it can be very useful. Education is one big area where we think this will have a massive impact. And there will be some areas where maybe it displaces some jobs, but that means that workers will become or will do more productive, work. So the mundane work may go to, for example, I'll just give you an example. So we are working with a very large e-commerce company in India that gets, so they have a marketplace model. They get around 50 million images which are uploaded by sellers, the seller network on their platform every month. 50 million. And some of these images are not publishable, meaning, let's say if you are selling a doormat and it has Indian flag on it, this company cannot put it on their website because they'll land in, court cases. So what do? Moderating 50 million images by humans is just impossible. So although they have a model today which is sort of a mix of human as well as technology intervention, but they can only monitor 1/10 of what they are supposed to. So 5 million out of 50 is what they are able to do. So with what we are doing with them is to bring computer vision, image recognition. So all those 50 million images will go through our sort of pipeline where we will detect whether something like this is happening with that image or not. So it improves human productivity because those people who are working with us, as part of this company's infrastructure, will be able to improve, the coverage of images that they are covering today. Plus also the company will be much safer going forward. So that's just a small example of how AI is helping today. It's the thing that we are doing today in India with a very large marketplace. So my point is that it'll have a massive impact. It'll improve productivity in a big way. Quality of life will improve. I think GDP will have a much better, growth, considering how these changes will come into place over the next few years. So I think it's a technology that we are very bullish about, and with we feel that society has to adopt it.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow panelists that we have to change the narrative, and for a young country like India, there's no reason to be not positive about these technologies. But I think what's happening right now is that there, Megha, you and me were talking about this also earlier in the day. There's a lot of talk about projections that, by 2025, this is how things will change, or this will be the number, or the industry value of AI or blockchain and stuff. So I think we've got to think more about how to get there. So, what are the tangible things that we need to do? I think one thing which we are all talking about is skills. There would be new skills which would be needed. So how do we actually, and India, we're not the best in terms of bringing in vocational skills which are in tandem with the market needs. So I think that's one. The second is regulation. We just saw in the budget as well, there was this big hullabaloo by the media that they thought that the finance ministers has destroyed the cryptocurrency market in India. But then actually, what came out but the next day, in the next 24 hours, is that he was talking about more regulated market for that. So we need to, I think, now focus about the more tangible aspects of how to get to the vision that we have, and who knows how it will turn out really. So that was, I think that's what's the need of that.
On that, yeah.
I'll just add something.
Yeah.
I think as one looks at, well, what skills are needed and what jobs get created, I just want to go back to 30 years ago. I was in Delhi with a few guys who are now stalwarts of the IT industry, and we were talking about the software boom coming, and the issue then was that will we ever have the people to service what opportunity we have? And I think magically there was no MCA degrees, there was hardly any computer science degrees. I mean, barely 100 people in IITs got computer science degrees in the 1980s. But magically, when the opportunity came, the skills followed. So I think the real issue always is that industries have to get created, which create jobs. And somehow the skills follow. It's not, you cannot do it bottom up, start thinking about creating skills and assuming that the jobs will follow that. I think the two things I want to highlight is that one is that industries get created because of big macro trends. So as an example, I mean, one of the things the government is focused on is healthcare. If you look at world's population is aging all over. They have to be serviced. And some of those things that need to be done for the aging population cannot be done by machines. They involve emotions, they involve variability of care and things like that. That is, one thing is to look at big macro trends like there is aging, there is a cyber threat, which I don't think technology alone can solve. It will absorb huge amounts of people. There is a lack of trust of information. You have the internet. The trust factor has to be built. Again, if you look at Google and others are hiring thousands of people to look at what is actually being published. And I think AI will take a long time to factor in how people react to things and how trust is built. So I think one is the big macro trend. I think
so you're saying jobs are not going to be killed overnight?
No, I don't think so. I think new jobs and new industries will be created, and I think it's, again, very important to focus on what new industries are coming up, which could be labor intensive, and there are plenty of them. So I don't sweat over the fact that a few industries will scale down because some others will come up. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing really is that, back to my point over hard jobs versus head jobs, there is just the fact that things get automated and people have time. I think the point Vinay was making, that people have time. Then they have the time to indulge in a lot of things that have more variability, that have more creative aspects to it. And I think one has to find out also a little bit more about what are those areas where people are going to spend more time looking at variability, looking at different kinds of ways of interacting with people and information. And I think that is where the opportunity lies. So I think it's much better for us to be thinking like entrepreneurs, where the entrepreneurs don't think negatively. They don't think about what can't be done. They think about what can be done and what should be done. It's more thinking around that to say, well, where are the opportunities to build industries? And that is where I think the entire focus should be.
Building industries. Vipul, you deal with entrepreneurs a lot, and Neeraj, I think you do too as well. Can both of you talk about the entrepreneurs that are coming up now? How focused are they on using technology? How, just what is the mindset? How hungry are they? What are they hoping to do?
So
how well? I mean, how many are there? Are there loads and loads of them, or is it just?
I would say all of them actually. So we have a wonderful cohort of 45 companies whom we work with in India right now. Each one of them actually is looking at their businesses and figuring out how do they leverage technology, be it AI, BI, or even hashtags up there. And these are companies which are not, the traditional tech companies based out of Bangalore. They're companies which are agricultural based in the heart of Tamil Nadu. And they're figuring out how do we use technology, how do we incorporate technology. Wonderful example of one of them based out of Pune is they actually do chilling operations. So they collect milk from farmers and then they bring it to a central location and sell it to one of the dairies. And they are incorporating technology in terms of sensors, in terms of data, in terms of chilling temperature. I'm seeing manufacturing companies really incorporating. They are in fact partnering with tech companies in a cohort to really transcend that quote unquote boundary of, I don't understand tech. They are looking at automation, they are looking at servicing their clients a different way. So I don't see jobs going away. I see, at least with whatever POV, point of view I have, I see more jobs getting created, different jobs getting created, And I do believe the power of the private enterprise, along with the government, I never walk away from that, will actually make us move in that direction. IT is a great example. Neeraj talked about it. So we'll have an AI industry next, probably.
Right. No, I just can add one more thing, which is that I think it's we also are glorifying the young entrepreneur, the one who's coming from startups, a bit too much relative to entrepreneurship that's coming from large corporations. So I think go back 100 years, Tata's created the hotel industry. That was entrepreneurship coming from a large group. I think Reliance has done wonderfully with Jio. It's not, I mean, just unleashed an entirely new force that can change
sensitive
the
topic.
landscape. So, no, fair enough. I think while one can question pricing and regulation, all those things, but the fact of the matter is that if you look at whether you look at Google data or look at any data, the quantum of people now accessing data, accessing video has changed phenomenally over the last 15 months, just creating a whole series of new opportunities there. So I think it is the responsibility of corporations, the responsibility of everyone to really be an entrepreneur.